Despite its name, the city of Milwaukee's light rail system, the Hop, has never left the ground. It sits on rails and it connects the Near East Side and downtown as far west as the Intermodal Station. However, it's been mired in controversy since well before its opening in 2018. Critics have claimed that not only has it literally never left the ground, it's figuratively never left the ground. We'll be discussing where it is now, what its past looks like, and what its future might look like in this episode of the Shepherd Traffic Podcast. I'm Joel Roberts.
Hi, I'm Colin Hughes. We're the startup Shepherd Traffic. We make transportation analytics software to make cities beautiful, livable, and human-centered as possible.
Yeah. So last week we talked about bike lanes and why they frequently look empty. I'd noticed that even though I've rode the Hop here and there, I don't use it that much, and it feels like the Hop is really empty.
Well, I use it, so there is at least one other person.
Oh, tell me about that.
Yeah, so it's very convenient. So it's about a 5-minute walk from where I live, and then coming here to where we work in Ward 4, it's literally right in front. So
Yeah.
it's beautiful.
Yeah.
It's very convenient.
It's very convenient. It's actually really close to where you live and where you work. So you might actually be one of the power users of the
I
Hop.
might be the power user,
Yeah.
yeah.
Now,
And so I'm not just the only one. When I'm on there, I do see other people. I've met even tourists in the area, so people visiting. And they seem to like it to get around. Maybe they don't rent a car. But I also do see other locals using it as well.
yeah. And back when I lived closer to Bronzeville, up on MLK, where I don't live there anymore, I would actually use it a decent amount when I was like skateboarding around the city, where I would get all the way to that Pick and Save a little bit further downtown. And I'd use that to just get into the city and get back if I didn't want to walk as far, right? So I've used it, but I haven't really used it as much since, even though our office, as we've mentioned, is right by one of the stops.
Literally right in front.
Yeah. And here's the thing. How long have you actually been using the Hop?
Less than a month.
And why is that?
Well, because I just moved to where I am now, and it did play some role, especially since we work at a stop, and it's convenient as well because just one stop down, there's the train to Chicago. So visiting my sister or visiting the city, it becomes a little bit easier.
Yeah. And so, and we'd kind of say that, like, it's not the full reason why you moved.
It's not the full reason, but it is part of the reason.
Yeah. But I'm sure it helped when you were looking at places. And kind of piggybacking on top of that, actually, one of the reasons that the Hop serves the areas it serves right in the center of the city is that when it was built out as part of a TIGER program, right? The Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery, a set of grants that were trying to build a lot of things, including light rail, to improve the economy after the 2008 financial crisis, right? And so when looking for where can we grow stuff, in placing where the Hop is, they were looking for places that were already growing as a way to improve that growth. And so part of the reason that our offices are here is because that the streetcar is here, but part of the reason the streetcar is here is because our offices are in a really good place in town. And I think that's similar to, why you moved where you moved.
Yeah, because it's connected. It opens up more possibilities. So Milwaukee's a pretty small city, and having something like that facilitates, exploring a certain part. I mean, parking downtown isn't the hardest, but it's also not the most convenient. So not having to do that is a good option.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, one pretty intense criticism of the Hop has come from people who are looking at underserved communities, right? They make the claim that where the Hop goes is not very diverse, and it doesn't really serve Milwaukee's minority communities in the north side.
And that it's not that extensive either, so it can't reach these communities.
Yeah.
And in part, I hear that criticism.
And so there have been plans or hopes and whispers to eventually expand the Hop out to Bronzeville in the north and Bayview in the south.
Mm-hmm.
But currently, it's not going to have the chance to expand in the near future because of all the controversy and the political hamstringing that's going on. And we're going to start to get into that a little bit, yeah. So we're going to give a brief overview of the history of streetcars and the history of the Hop and where all that money comes from and how it got spent.
Right, starting pretty far back. So Joel, tell us the origin of the streetcar in Milwaukee.
Yeah, absolutely. So the first streetcars were actually built in Milwaukee in 1860. A very long time. They were carried by horses, and they were massive issues in sanitation because of that.
As you can imagine.
You can imagine how much, we'll call that
Yes.
exhaust
Yes.
was coming from the horses. But they started being electrified a little bit later. So Appleton was actually the first place in Wisconsin that electrified their light rail in 1886. Milwaukee followed along in like 1890, I believe. As that grew out, people were using a lot of light rail to get pretty far. I believe as far north as Glendale and as far south as like South Milwaukee.
And if anybody's interested for a more in-depth analysis, there are images online still from that.
Oh,
That
so
chart.
Plenty
this
of
map.
Google, and maybe we can write a blog post about it at some
Maybe.
point for
But-
other people who want to read.
But we digress.
You crazy nerds, yeah. But a lot of those light rail systems actually fell into a lot of like bad financial problems over like the First World War, when the Great Depression happened. A lot of them actually got in trouble because they had agreements with the cities where they were serving, where they wouldn't raise fares even though they really needed to in order to stay afloat. And so around the 1950s, basically all of them got ripped up. And so between the 1950s and 2018, there was no light rail system or no streetcars in Milwaukee or the surrounding area, right?
And in Wisconsin, for that matter.
Now, all that started to change in around 1991 when $289 million allocation grant for Milwaukee area transit corridor to Waukesha opened up. They were really hoping on connecting those two cities that have a lot of traffic between them. I'm sure you can tell by the amount of traffic you run into
Yes.
when you're trying to go that direction. Yeah.
Especially by Miller Park, or what was formerly known as Miller Park.
Yeah, and this is actually an interesting story.
Yeah, tell us.
Or a digression I can make. So this past fall, I was actually, I also work part-time at the Waukesha County Technical College AI Lab, and last fall, it was when I interviewed. Now at that time, I had a car, but it was not working. It could go about a mile maybe, and I had to make it to the interview. And I remember I had to take, I think it was 4 or 5 separate bus lanes going through, I think, 3 different municipalities to get to the WCTC main campus. It took like 3 hours one way. I think I was gonna take it back, and then I begged my brother to like stay late at work or go do something just so I wouldn't have to go through that harrowing odyssey of a journey.
Which it is.
All the way back.
To go back to relive that journey.
Yeah, and it was, I remember how long it took and how annoying it was. I think I called you in the transit center in Waukesha being like, hey. Yeah, we had
Asking for a friend.
I think you were like going on vacation or like going on a trip somewhere.
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to help.
Yeah, sadly. But that goes to show just like how inconvenient it is to go between Milwaukee and Waukesha in present day, even though there's so much traffic.
Mm-hmm.
There's another guy that works with us that recently joined. He lives in Waukesha, but there's offices of the places he works in Milwaukee, and he has to be in Milwaukee a decent amount of time. So for the first couple weeks, he was telling me he was like breaking the bank just to pay for Ubers to get there. He could take the bus from Waukesha where he lived to WCTC. There's a pretty good bus lane that actually goes there, but going to Milwaukee was just a nightmare if you don't have a car, right? And we can also see that in like the current freeway project right by Brewer Stadium to add lanes, where there's a lot of people who want to go that way. I have to drive that way when I'm going to Waukesha, and it's just a nightmare, right, with all that traffic.
Right, and in fact, whenever we do have to go, whether it be to the WCTC or West, we do have the flexibility, so we go either earlier or later. But we are privileged in that sense. Not everybody can do that. I mean, some people have to work 9 to 5.
Yeah,
They have a certain schedule.
Not everyone has as few families at home as
Yes,
we do. Yeah,
yes.
we have no kids at home,
No
so we're a little
kids.
bit lucky we can be.
One dog, though. I mean, can't
One
forget about
dog.
that.
Yeah, we don't want to keep them up to. Yeah, but like literally when I go there, I'll make sure I'm going late enough that I'm missing
Right.
as much morning traffic as possible, and I'll sometimes stay to like 6 or 7 or even like 7:30 sometimes, just so I can avoid as much traffic.
To be super sure you miss it.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just like an extra 20 minutes
Right.
of sitting
It's not worth it.
in traffic, and it's horrible. And so kind of the goal of this $298 million or $89 million grant in 1991 was, let's get some way to move between these two cities more efficiently and effectively. At the time, the governor was actually looking to put some of that money towards highway use And so there was actually a civil rights consent arrangement that was created to give this mayor of Milwaukee veto power over how that money was used to make sure that it wasn't reappropriated for highway implementation, right? As there was also I believe there was a project for a bus corridor between those two places that got canceled. And when it got canceled, I believe $48 million was actually reappropriated back to the federal government. Because if they give you a bunch of money to build something, they're expecting that to get built. And if you don't build it, they want their money back.
Right, because they have an initiative with it. They want it to be used. In fact, it has to be used for very specific things.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a freely allocated sum of money.
Yeah, and that's actually a theme that's going to come back.
Right, it
later.
comes with strings attached.
Yeah, it's going to come back later in the story. Anyway, some of that money was actually used to remove part of the Park Freeway where the Fiserv Forum currently sits. Back in like 2002, I believe, was when that happened. And around the early 2010s, there was about $50 million of that initial $300 million left over. And so Milwaukee got about a $14 million Tiger grant, which is Transportation Investment Generating Economic Recovery Grant, which is an Obama-era grant for infrastructure to spur the economy, along with a $69 million CMAQ, Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Grant, to pull into it, along with, I believe, $54 million in local tax increments.
Yeah, that was also put up by the state.
Yeah.
And so it was matching.
And so around the early 2010s, there was finally enough of a push to start building it out. One thing leads to another. And in 2018, on November 2nd, was the first time that it actually opened. And I believe it was, when did it get extended?
Oh, so when did so the first extension would have been about 2 years ago, right? So it was 2024, an additional line that is about half a mile, I think 0.4 technically, and it now reached the lakefront. So it reaches the new high-rise building, the Couture. So
yeah, there's the H line that was the initial 2-ish miles,
and that's
the
L line, yeah.
The L line that now goes to the lake. And here's the thing: is as part of that, there were actually a lot of different cities that got grants to build out these light rails. I believe of that grant money for the Tiger program, maybe like 6% of that went towards light rail systems because they were trying to build in places that were growing to spur the economy, really modeled after the Portland light rail system. And so there were, about 12-ish, maybe a few more light rail systems, and we'll kind of list them off real quick. So Kansas City, Seattle, Detroit, Washington, D.C., Tucson, Milwaukee, Cincinnati, Charlotte, Oklahoma City, Atlanta, Dallas, and El Paso. They all got a similar program to Milwaukee. So it's actually a larger story about federal investment in light rail.
That extends beyond. And through those other examples, we can also see what worked well, what didn't. So we'll talk about Kansas City. They seem to have done the best, been the most successful with their light rail system.
Yeah, and so we can kind of get into, Kansas City really is
specifically
the most successful light rail system out of those, I'm sad you didn't make a comment on whether I should be on the Animaniacs, how fast I put those out. So a lot of these cities built out an initial 2-ish, 3-ish miles of light rail, but Kansas City actually extended, they opened in 2016, but they extended to a little bit under 7 miles, 6.9 miles in track, which ended up doubling their ridership, and they've most recently extended that program in 2025.
And they've also stayed free, which is interesting, and that's also similar to what Milwaukee's trying to juggle right now. So with all the success, they've still been able to keep it free to those users, and so that's 7 miles. That's pretty considerable.
Yeah, and Milwaukee's, the Hop line is currently still
also free.
Yeah.
Yes. And we talk a little bit about that it seems like there has been some talk of at least putting some sort of fare on it. But that doesn't come without costs of policing it, of ensuring people are paying, even installing ticket booths, ticket machines. I mean, these all have costs as well. And so there is a trade-off in place.
Yeah, and one thing I think I read was that one of the reasons that it's currently free, one of the reasons is that the Potawatomi has a grant to keep it free for naming rights. But another reason it's free is that the cost of implementing a fare system would actually be less than the expected revenue you'd get by building out a fare system. And so interestingly enough, it's actually fair to have no fare because it just doesn't make sense financially unless you can really, really decrease the cost of collecting fares.
which is still in progress. But
Yeah.
it is an interesting case study. And
Well, how many people are using? Because like you use it, obviously,
I use
right?
it sometimes.
I've used it from time to time. I've
Mhm.
used it less, obviously. What do kind of like the ridership numbers look like? Because it opened in 2018. I'm sure there was a dip off over COVID.
Mm-hmm. So it was very popular that first year. In fact, the highest numbers were totaled, I believe it was the second weekend in July when they have Bastille Days,
Which year?
is really nice, to 2019. So it opened in fall of 2018, and then that first year, that first summer, it had the highest month in July. And so this is during Bastille Days. If anybody's been there, they know it's right downtown, right in Cathedral Square. Cool festival. But anyway, I digress. This was the greatest turnout
It was-
at any time.
Yeah, and then over COVID, I think.
And then over COVID, it dipped, and it's unfortunately never recovered. Now, there has been some of an increase, but it has not reached those first-year levels.
And if we're looking for actual numbers, I think the golden year is around, 700,000 ridership over a year, and currently it's hovering a little bit below 500,000.
Something like this, yeah. And anybody can go to the HOP site to check this out, but those are the rough numbers.
Yeah. And so the ridership is looking a little bit weird,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of decisions as to why or why not it's a good idea, right? It only serves part of the city. It's not very extensive.
It's not extensive at all.
People don't really want to build out more. There's a lot of people who have said like, hey, let's not use it. I've actually heard stories from people, and we were talking about this, where at one intersection, I think right by the Pettit Center, or not the Pettit Center, but Uline Hall, the Marcus Center,
Mm-hmm.
there's an intersection there, and that has transit signal priority to make sure that the light rail can get through. And I've heard from a decent number of people that they'll have to sit and wait like 2 full cycles.
And everybody knows what that feels like, to
And
be at a light going nowhere.
Yeah, and especially that like moment of like, wait, it skipped me.
Like, what the hell? I'm here.
That's such a horrible moment, and there's no sign as to why that is. Now there's an interesting case where the Milwaukee Hop is actually a little bit of an innovation in light rail, right? I believe it was the first U.S. streetcar to use GPS-based track switching technology. So I believe it's doing its transit signal by figuring out how close it is to the intersection, which that might actually be part of the reason that it feels a little bit off, right?
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was also the first streetcar that used off-wire streetcars. So for 40% of its track length, it's working entirely on batteries. And so if you look like farther west on the L line, that's why there's no wires up top, whereas if you're right in front of the public market, there's wires all over to power it, which is a really, really interesting case. Yeah. And so now, here's the question. It's where it is now, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
Where does it go from here?
Right, because it's just okay, like you mentioned. It serves a purpose, but it's not something that you're so excited that you tell everybody about or you recommend.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost as it's either in that point of stasis where it's, it either needs to, unfortunately, not exist or expand, right?
Yeah. It's like a sapling that's, small enough to be something, but, it either needs to kind of grow or die. And so there's actually a decent amount of people who have called for, like...
Right?
Yeah, ripping it out.
Right.
And so one of the reasons, and there's actually a very, very interesting and good reason why it's a really, really bad idea to rip it out. Specifically, it was funded by federal grants, and so if it were to be removed, the city of Milwaukee would be on the hook for a $48 million clawback from the federal
Right, because that's
government.
$48 million they had budgeted to have, and now they don't. And that's not nothing for a city like Milwaukee.
Yeah, for Milwaukee, $48 million is a big problem. And
Right.
basically, the Department of Public Works Commissioner Gerald Kruschke has basically stated as much like, look, if you're going to move this, you're going to have to find that $48 million somewhere because we just don't have it. And a further consequence is that part of that grant was from the FTA. If it gets ripped out, it really, really damages the city of Milwaukee's ability to get future FTA grants or be eligible, because we're basically showing ourselves to be very, very bad stewards of funding.
Right, it's no longer attractive. It's like, oh, we've given you this, and look what you did. You ripped it out. So why would we want to give it back to you?
Yeah, and so and part of the story here is there's a lot of alignment problems. There's a lot of people who want to build something
Mm-hmm.
and want to expand and have like progressive ideas about the future, about how we can build more stuff. But amongst that coalition, there's frequently a huge disconnect between agreeing on something should be done and agreeing on what should be done. And it's not enough for everyone to agree that something must be done. Everyone has to agree on what the plan of attack is. And so there's a lot of disparate ideas on what to do. Whereas on the other side of people who are saying, we don't want to do this, we like it how it is, we don't want to extend, I like what it's doing here. Everyone can agree on don't do anything, and you don't have to do any extra work on building the coalition or the alignment of what specific things shouldn't we do. Every specific thing, right? No is a much, much easier thing to agree on than yes. And so I think part of the city of Milwaukee's story is just the difficulty in finding that alignment, the difficulty in figuring out how we can all work together towards a common goal of the future, but also making the hard decisions of like, here's where we're going, and you might not agree on every single detail, but we got to work with it, right? Otherwise, we're just stuck in stasis.
So what does that look like for expansion?
Yeah. And so this is where we start to get into very recent history.
Mm-hmm.
So in 2023, Act 12 was passed, which, among other things, let the city of Milwaukee and the county of Milwaukee start to institute some new property taxes, essentially. And that was very, very necessary to help the city and county essentially avert fiscal ruin. Last year, the Milwaukee County Transit System's bus system was essentially broke, and they had to raise fare prices specifically to avert that reason. It went from $2 to $2.75, which really bothered me, not so much for the price increase, but because I couldn't split $10 among 5 exact.
Wow.
And so the mathematician that likes everything,
The mathematician in you, right?
yeah,
It's like,
it wasn't divisible anymore.
No.
And that bothered me,
Now
right?
you need coins, quarters.
Do $2.50, then it's $4 to $10, and that feels better, right? But another part of Act 12 was that it stipulated that no sales or property taxes were going to be allowed for operations or expansions of the hop. And so with that, any expansion to Bronzeville or Bayview or anywhere at all is essentially dead on arrival until that changes. Or, $50 million falls out of the sky, which seems rather unlikely. That's really where we're at right now, where we're in a hole $48 million if we remove it, and that has further implications down the line.
For future grants or future federal funding.
Yeah, for Milwaukee being an attractive place to invest. And at the same time, we can't expand it because basically all the funding sources are just, locked out. And so it looks like for at least the near future, until something changes, the future of the hop is going to be maintaining the status quo and keeping it operating as best as it can.
Just staying afloat.
Yeah, and you and I are going to use it as much as it's convenient.
As long as it's there.
And we're going to appreciate it, but we can appreciate that there's potential in this.
There definitely is, and we would both agree that, it's pretty comfortable to ride. I've never run into any issues. There's no really aggressive people. Obviously I'm a man, so it's a little bit different in terms of how I feel, but never felt in harm's way. It's a pretty friendly community there usually.
Yeah.
What about you? What are your any thoughts on it?
Well, I've never really felt unsafe. I think every now and again you see someone, you're like, oh, maybe I feel a little bit weird. But also I think that's part of the game of riding public transit in an imperfect world, and we can live with that trade-off. I think it was more likely or more common that if I'm skateboarding a lot, I'm all sweaty and I look really weird.
Oh, so it's almost like you push people away.
Yeah, I walk in and I'm like, am I decreasing the quality of public transit?
Clear a whole space for you.
Yeah, and oh no, and part of me is a little bit happy when it's not that full because I get to really appreciate that time. There have been a decent number of times when I'm out and I've left my car at home and I'm out and about the city and I'm exhausted and I'm so grateful that the hop is there and I can sit and I can rest. I don't have to walk the whole rest of the way back, right? Because a lot of times I leave my phone and everything except my keys just so I'm light and I'm free and unbounded.
Free, I like that.
Yeah.
Disconnected.
Yeah. Well, this has been fun. We we've gone through a decent amount of history. We've touched on how it actually connects to our lives specifically.
Yeah, and it's been cool to dive deeper because it's something that I do use, and I've honestly taken it for granted. But getting more into the details into how it came about puts a little bit more meaning into it. And it puts it into perspective for me. So I've been very grateful to be able to do a bit of that. And
Mm-hmm.
we've gotten to produce a podcast through this, so
Yeah.
it's cool. It's a good outlet.
And we've been forced to reckon with what the history of building a better city and dealing with everyone's concerns and the difficulty and the hope of what that might look like in the future. I think that's a good place to leave it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this has been the Shepherd Traffic Podcast. Thank you all for listening. Check us out anywhere else. I'm Joel Roberts.
And I'm Colin Hughes.
Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.